So it's 8 o'clock and we're meeting here once again at the intersection. I'm going to start though by saying in 2 weeks from today, who can believe it? But it's Thanksgiving. And so we will not be meeting. It's the one Thursday in the year that we do not meet. So just to start reminding you, I just can't believe how quickly the months are traveling. I don't know about you, but it's just hard for me to believe. So good morning. And we've got some really interesting things that we're going to be talking about today. But before that, we'll take time for a couple announcements. One thing that I want to mention, and maybe Nadia or Wendy are online. I don't know if they are. I can look real quick.
I'll be there too. I mean, on Saturday as well.
Yeah, the welcome walk. It says the second one. It started just last year and came out of a gap in our collective services, our collaborative services in terms of refugees. And what we noticed in the services, so this goes back to all of our collaborations, what we noticed in the services, we had services to help people when they got here because there's a lot of paper and all that kind of thing. But we needed folks who would help others become San Antonians and be in it for the long haul, neighbors, right? So it formed communities of welcome. And that came out of Cultural Lingua, Nadia's group, and the Interfaith San Antonio Alliance. And so basically congregations companioning refugees and welcoming them and telling them where to go shop for groceries and all those other things that those neighbors do, right? And out of that came this welcome walk. And the mayor was there last year. He's going to be here this year. So anyway, that's Saturday. If everyone could close their mic, that would be lovely. That's this Saturday at Denman Estate Park. And if you've never been there, just to go there will be worth your time. 10 to 2, Denman Estate Park. I see that Lauren is here, Lauren Deal with the food bank. Lauren, would you like to tell us about Sunday night?
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry, I'm just making it into the office. Yes, we would love to invite everybody to come out Sunday at 6 o'clock. We're going to have our 3rd annual Feeding Hope event, and many of the people that are participating in this call are going to be there, including the lovely Ann Helmke. It's going to be at the Soul Center from 6 to 7 with opportunities for just coffee and conversation before and after. So we're just hoping people can come. So many people need a reason to just be thankful right now and find a way to really engage in the community. And so we're hoping to do that. We've got some great speakers, Nadia from Cultural Lingua, who's doing the 2nd annual welcome walk, Don Martin, Pastor Herman Price, as well as our very own Eric Cooper will all be speaking. So we're very excited about that event and grateful for the opportunity to share. So thank you, Anne. Thank you very much.
And in case you're not familiar with the Soul Center, Source of Light Center, it's at University Presbyterian Church. Sits right behind Trinity University on Shook. And the Soul Center has been around for quite a while now, focuses on education mostly, and interfaith, learning about many faiths and what others think and believe. And so it's very much looking at community-wide knowledge as well as community-wide healing and collaboration. So the theme, so I don't give it all away, but the theme is hope is an action. And the reflections that those folks are bringing, I got just a little bit of a preview yesterday on those, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say. They're very exciting. So hope you'll join us. Are there any other announcements? I know that Eric was caught a wee bit in traffic. He thought he'd be here any minute. So any other, Martha Ann has an announcement.
Let's continue thinking about gun safety. And this afternoon, University of the Incarnate Word, 3 o'clock, a conversation. Police Chief McManus will be with us. And I just want to say there was such a wonderful event last night at the Jewish Community Center. He was among the speakers. The mayor was a speaker. A sad anniversary of the Holocaust. And last night we were talking about standing together in the face of prejudice and hate. May we stand together. So it's just so great to be with all of you this morning and to continue how we're bonding and working for good in our city.
That reminds me something that I wanted to mention today, and that's about gun violence. So it's and disarmament and what we can be doing as a community. And we do have a collaborative among us, what we're calling the Sand Society Community Collaborative, and working at how to get information out into the community, making our schools safer. But if you're interested in going deep into like legislation and that kind of change, I point you to Cops Metro. And companion to that is the interfaith Paul Furukawa is going to have to break down the acronym for me.
Community Action Network.
Thank you. And they're the folks who are really in the community leading that way into the, the deeper legislation and those kinds of changes. Now, working in the, I'm still watching for Eric. Somebody tell me when Eric arrives. It also means that it's as Cops Metro reminds me, that this is a long path. It's not something that you can just go and participate with, but it's a congregational effort, an organizational effort. There's process, but if you're interested in really rolling up your sleeves and being a part of that and aren't already, you need to connect with Lizzie Gore. Maybe Paul or somebody could put her contact information into chat. That's Lizzie Gore with Cops Metro. So let's see.
Anne?
Yes.
If I just wanted to say that the Jewish Community Center has a project, an activity about Shabbat. I mean, it's in the context of knowing each other better and, countering anti-Semitism, that if there's people who've never been to a Shabbat dinner on a Friday night and who would like to come, like people across the city are inviting people. So Peter and I would like to welcome 4 to 6 people. If you've never been, if you're interested, we would love to invite you. It's December 2nd for dinner. So I'm going to put my email in the chat. And if you're interested or just have questions, please write to me. Okay.
So Sharon, you've invited some people, a few people, but this sounds like a larger effort within the Jewish community.
Yes, it is.
If there are
yes,
others who want to be more involved, who do they talk to? Who's organizing this?
Well, okay. Can I share this screen?
Well, could you maybe, I see that Eric is with us and it's about 8:09.
Okay.
Could you
Yeah,
maybe
all right,
put that contact information in the chat?
Yeah.
That'd be great. So good morning again. We've got things going on, right? Not to mention, Tuesday was, that voting day, but tomorrow is also Veterans Day, and we just keep moving along. Eric's with us. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
And he's not the Eric Estrada from Chips, and anybody who recognizes that will also recognize how old they are on the screen. But Eric is with what was formerly known as the SA Clubhouse. And we're going to be hearing about how it's been renamed rebranded in the last half a dozen months. But I want to put a little context down about how this fits into things that we have been talking about across time, right? So we've really spent, and this has also helped Eric a little bit, we've spent the summer looking at the different collaborative efforts within the faith-based initiative and how that's been impacted, you know, in the community, how people can get involved, but also what, you know, like education and other things that they can get from it. So one of those collaboratives that we hear about quite a bit grew into Bridges to Care at NAMI. Mm-hmm. And that's the process that we've been working on to create cohorts of congregations, a half a dozen to 10 congregations in geographical proximity. They get 20 hours of no cost mental health training, but really creating that localized community of care that's then able to recognize symptoms, but also learn how to companion, basically how to be humans again with each other and community. I wanted to show you this drawing. It's from Bridges to Care and the website, and you'll see that in the center of it, we find the residents and those in need of mental health care and companioning and love. And then these different kind of levels that we have, those congregational cohorts, and how they partner then with folks that are within the city structure. And so we've got these kind of circle ripple effect happening, and part of that ripple effect is right over here. So part of the larger network, which in talk about strength within our community, you recognize some of these on the outer circle, who came together and are still working together to fill gaps, to reach out, and that kind of work. So that's the context. And this is the SA Clubhouse, now known as Forum Communities, Inc. in San Antonio. As I recall, it's a national model. So Eric, maybe you could tell us, I got really curious because I just heard some things lately about them changing their name, but I also heard some language in that about self-healing communities. And Eric, we've been looking more and more at collective trauma, how we heal as a community, how we form communities. We've been doing a lot of conversation about community. So if you could tell us a little bit about the Clubhouse, but then more importantly, that shifting in the branding, the naming, and really about self-healing communities. It's all yours.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. So, and you're right, the Clubhouse model for recovery is a national model. It's an international model. Been around for about 75 years, started in New York, has expanded to about 35 different countries. We have hundreds of clubhouses around the world. We did not create that model at the San Antonio Clubhouse, but we do it pretty well, and we've helped expand that model across Texas. We've helped open up the first clubhouse in Mexico, and we provide support to lots of clubhouses in lots of areas. The shift to form communities earlier this year was really predicated on the work that we've been doing outside of the Clubhouse model, right? So the Clubhouse in his essence is about creating physical spaces where people can come together to create a sense of community, create a sense of purpose, and provide resources and support for individuals living with a history of mental health challenges. And so all of our members of the Clubhouse are folks that primarily have gone through the healthcare systems and at some point gotten diagnosed, and live with a mental health diagnosis of some sort. The Clubhouse, though, when you think about what it is, really is something that is applicable in lots of environments, the way we see it. You don't have to have PTSD to benefit from being in a place with nice people who treat you well and where you do meaningful things, and I think this group is probably one that would understand it the best. I've had people ask in the past, it's like, what are the alternatives to the Clubhouse? With the question always being framed around what nonprofits are an alternative to the Clubhouse. And I always say the alternative to the Clubhouse, the best ones are going to be churches. It's a place where you go, you work on yourself, you're around other people. There's generally a positive reason to congregate. and people know who you are and you're a part of something, you know. And so churches are a really great, different kind of clubhouse community, you know, effectively. And so that is the way that we look at Clubhouse. Well, over the last couple of years, what we found is that we couldn't, as the Clubhouse, as that community, always provide the supports that people needed. And we were without tools. And so our best bet was always to refer people to other organizations. And we found that challenging. We found that sometimes lacking. You didn't always know what you'd get or where folks would end up. And someone on our team who was a certified peer specialist by the, you know, in the state of Texas said, what if we provided peer services for our folks? And we didn't know what that meant exactly, you know, so we were fortunate to have space where we could spread out and do that. And we started our very first peer services in about 2018 to provide those supports to the Clubhouse members. And what we quickly realized is like this peer support model could do a lot of things for our folks that the Clubhouse cannot. But we don't have the peer specialists necessarily to do this. We don't have the workforce to do this. And so we started figuring out how we could go about training people and like making this a reality. And what we found ourselves doing a few months into it was becoming our own certified training entity to train other people to be peer specialists. And we started training people all over Texas. We trained people again in Canada, in Mexico, and in other areas as well. And so today we are one of the largest trainers of mental health peer specialists in Texas, if not the largest trainer of mental health peer specialists in Texas. And over the last couple of years, our peer support arm has grown significantly, where we now provide peer services on site here at the Clubhouse for our members, but we treat the Clubhouse as just one of the environments where we provide supports. We're also at other organizations, we're at other nonprofits, we're in clinical settings. And so when you start talking about these like self-healing communities, you know, what we envision as self-healing communities is replicating what we have done with the Clubhouse, which is a community of people exists, needs exist. The needs aren't always addressable by the people that are there natively without some, you know, additional support or injection of resources. And so our approach is often to send our peer specialists, the people that have been doing this for a while, send them into an environment, get to know the environment, get to know the people, get to know the people that are receiving services at that environment, if there are people receiving services. And as we get to know that organization or that community, we figure out like, well, maybe what they need more of are these kinds of resources here. So we can help them figure out maybe how to deliver some of that or how to do that or how to support people or link people when that's appropriate. But the best thing that we can do is also find people within that community that already love that community. And then we can train them to go back and do what we do there, but from within. You don't need to have us always in your community. If we can be there to help you figure out how you can do what we do on your own, you know. And so when we talk about the self-healing community, we're talking about really that whole cycle of you already have a place, you already need of something. We might be able to help you figure out what that is, help find people that are appropriate to be trained as peer specialists. We can train them to be peer specialists. And now you have your own internal people that love your community and can do that kind of work. And so we are very fortunate to have a level of, I guess, credibility with the state of Texas. We've gotten federal investment for 2 years in a row for multi-year contracts to train peers in Texas. We are supporting people all across Texas when it comes to training services and capacity building and workforce development. And so we have a team that is the peer support force, basically, for the peer specialists of Texas, helping people navigate resources, get trained, get certified. And so, you know, I think that by this time next year, it'll be really hard to be a peer specialist in Texas, anywhere in Texas, without having an interaction with our team. Like we are the gateway basically to that entire workforce. We only do direct services in San Antonio. We don't do direct services today in any other cities. But you know, that is probably going to change at some point in the future as well. But you know, so bringing it back to what is a self-healing community for us, it is finding a community, finding the needs, bringing our people into it, having our people become part of the community, learn about it, find people there, train people there, and then we can leave, you know, if that makes sense. Or we have people that always stay as part of that community. So in a nutshell, that is what the self-healing community idea is. And so the reason we shifted to form communities as our name about 6-7 months ago is because we were finding ourselves in awkward conversations in Houston and in Dallas and in other places where people would say, we appreciate your support, but why would the San Antonio Clubhouse help our peer specialists, you know, in Dallas? How are those related to each other? And so we you know, at that point we said we were going to have some kind of branding, and the name Form Communities felt like the right thing for us based on what we do, based on what we're trying to accomplish, based on what we're trying to encourage. And that is the arc of kind of how we got to here. And so I'll pause there, and in case there are questions or comments, I'm going to be mindful of time.
Well, before we make that shift, because I do have a comment and a kind of an invitation to everybody, but Eric, we pause about 8:30, and I'm hoping you might be able to stay for about 15 minutes more. If you can't, that's okay, if you have another meeting. But we pause and we try to give the bulk of the information between 8 and 8:30 so other people can go, but those who can stay. So cool. I'm hoping that as we were all listening, because I put into the email yesterday the notification that this is an ancient model, yet very innovative. It's like humans kind of forget the best stuff or whatever, but I'm hoping that people, as you were listening, as I was listening, were taking what Eric was saying and where you see that happening, you know, like in your work, or where it could be happening in work that is going on. It's kind of that ripple effect, the importance of community, in community, where you live community, right? But strengthening that capacity by those who are practicing it more, and then they share those really basic practices, and to even translate things like peer support. You know, you'll find that very common in direct service organizations, in social work. Another name for that would be a companion, in, you know, a neighbor, you know, that basic, you know, any young person who has one significant human being in their life that cares has more chances of thriving and surviving. Like, that's the number one asset. And so that's what Eric's talking about, and how that then, that community, as it strengthens its knowledge, its practices, its skills, that itself can heal itself. And I could go more in terms of like nature and how we're reflective of that, and why wouldn't we be? You know, nature too will heal itself. So I want to invite at this point, I mean, I see it, so I'm going to invite other examples of where people see it in our work. I see it in Bridges to Care. To me, it's obvious. The model that Eric is talking about is obvious in Bridges to Care. Its approach is bringing congregations together as peers, and then training within those congregations so that those ambassadors, so it's, let's just use simple numbers, there's 6 congregations, and then if 10 people in each congregation are trained in mental health care and being more aware and what to look for, now there's 60 people in that community, in that geography, who are now about healing the community. It's a self-healing community. It also knows what to look for that's missing, and then how to work together to make that happen. It recognizes what skills everybody brings to the table out of those 6 congregations. They're not alike, but they probably each have a really strong something going on, right? So I see it. It's just really, and I think it's important we all start seeing that, and be strategically working that way and aware, and to affirm it where we see it and strengthen it where it needs to go. Because as we grow larger as a city in geography, the only way we're going to do that in a healthy way is we've got to work smaller in smaller spaces. Wouldn't it be great, you know, like within each of those cohorts, that there was a clubhouse, one area within that 6 where it was built even more deeply in terms of mental health care. That could be a really cool thing. Okay, now I'm going to quit. It's 8:24, and I want to invite anyone out there, if within your work or our collaborative work, where you see the same model happening and the potential of it, and what could be stronger by listening to Form Communities, Inc. Karen Ball has her hand up. Go, Karen.
Hi, I see it having application with the Domestic Violence Collaborative in terms of congregations, particularly pastors, because those would be the individuals most likely to hear an outcry, but to know the signs so that if you're sitting in a pew beside someone, you can identify signs of suspected domestic violence at home, and then how can you empower the congregations to become resources not only for the person that and family that when I say family, I'm thinking about children that are receiving the brunt of the abusive behavior. Not only how can you respond to them, but also how can you respond to the person that's using the abusive behavior, and providing that individual with resources that don't rely on abusive behavior.
I'm also thinking, Karen, in what you were describing and what Eric also described, when he's talking about peer supports, it also means people with life experience.
Right.
And that engagement and how powerful it is. So in terms of what you're talking about, that would also mean within those congregations, not just clergy, but it would mean people with lived experience in whatever that means with domestic violence.
Yeah.
And I know that that is a huge step in domestic violence, but the power that's in it, right, Eric? When you get people
Right.
who've lived it from whatever direction,
Mhm.
makes all the difference. What I love what Eric's doing, he's taking notes. I don't know if anybody noticed that, but he's listening too. He's taking notes and he's learning. Anyone else have an
I
example
saw
where they can
Donna
see?
had her hand up and then it like went away. I don't know if Donna still had her hand up.
Donna?
This is, and I'm sorry I didn't put my hand up, but I do have something to say about
Okay.
this.
Kendra?
So, yes, ma'am. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Kendra with AmeriCorps Public Allies, and I'm stationed at West Care, Texas. This is my second year. So I'd like to say that AmeriCorps Public Allies San Antonio is totally fundamentally based off of this model, by giving people the opportunity that live in marginalized settings, people with disabilities, people that are elderly, people that are pregnant, and including them on the mission to make society better. And West Care, Texas, by employing those people, and in a large number, are saturating the San Antonio community with people that are peer counselors just by sheer chance. So I would also like to go a step further and say that West Care, Texas has also provided Bridges to Care training to the RAFA cohort, which is still in operation today. And we work collaboratively doing summer camp for the kids. You know, Miss Beverly Watts Davis has really been a staunch supporter of keeping our offices in the community where we serve, which is at the Ella Austin Center. We're very supportive of our councilman, Jalen McKee Rodriguez. There's a huge sense of family there. And I'm glad the Beverly is on this call, because I think that becoming peer support would be another avenue to mental health hub resources when we have our renovation that doesn't have a religious aspect, which might appeal to some more people. So anyways, I think the West Care does an amazing job of it, and so does AmeriCorps Public Allies. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. And I think that's how we too build a stronger, larger community, is by knowing those larger efforts in the larger community and becoming not only more aware, but by partnering with them. And I really think one of the key questions that today brings to each of us in whatever work we're doing is that peer component. So, you know, like if you're in a collaborative effort, is that peer component in there, folks with life experience? And if it's not, how could that part be engaged? So that's I think an important question. Rosa Edna, you have your hand up, and then of course Beverly does, or Rosa's went down.
Hello, hi everybody.
Hi.
Well, I'm just gonna let you know that a peer-to-peer or the peer who's gonna be training must have the experience of domestic violence and also psychological violence that my experience in the house. I am a living testimony of survival of domestic violence and psychological violence. So it is very important to educate, guide, and also train those peers so we are able, or they're able to identify with the person who is having these situations at home, especially the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And by sharing the story, the relationship will strengthen so much. And then in this relationship, the person who is receiving the help, it might help another one. So it's like a domino effect, basically.
Right.
And it's so important that peer have experienced domestic violence or psychological violence. I just want to mention to you guys that because I am a survivor.
Thank you, Rosa Edna, for sharing that. That's what we need. Beverly, well, it's 8:32. Those who are having to leave, some already have. Thank you for being here. This coming week, we're going to have a very important update on vaccines. Yeah, you think we don't need to talk about it, but we still do, and that means lots of vaccines, and lots of things are changing at the turn of this year. And so I really encourage you to be here next Thursday to be up to date on that. Beverly, did you still want to say something? You took your hand down.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I just wanted to be able to say, thanks for the shout out, but I also want to be able to say, as I'm looking on this phone, I see a lot of people who are, true connectors in our community. Truly, I see Doug Beach, but I also see Mark Whittigan. I'm only, and you've done such a great job of bringing people together. And perhaps, Eric, thank you for what you're talking about. But I'm wondering if, like, you really want your office to expand, Ann, but I'm just putting in a plug for you to think about. There really is, in terms of community problem solving, I think the beauty of what we try to do is truly help people form coalitions. We just recently did one with the pastors around domestic violence, and then yesterday people were looking at really trying to address intergenerational poverty and the lack of businesses, particularly on the east side. Today there's a group that's coming together to focus in on helping small businesses survive, and all of these things are connected to us being able to problem solve in our community. All of these things are connected to the kinds of social determinants and supports all people need in terms of employment, housing, those kinds of things. And so I just wanted to thank you for bringing people together, but I do think people forming a group, you can call it a coalition, you can call it a group, you can call it a peer of like-minded people trying to solve a problem. I almost wish we had a kind of coalition center where people who are trying to come together around an issue can go to and say, hey, here is how we're doing it. Eric, gave great examples of how that's happening. Just right now, our domestic violence and violence in the East Side has escalated and in triple ways. And so people are coming together to begin to talk about stopping the violence and what can be done. But we don't really have a coalition center here. And I know it's kind of a nebulous thing and it's hard to say exactly what its outcomes are, but the kind of work that you've been doing with bringing people together in the intersection is exactly that kind of outcome. People say it's not that people coming together is not an outcome. It really is an outcome, of people, like-minded people, because people never solve problems by themselves. And I do think the fact that, that you're continuing to support and create a safe space for people to find help on different issues and come together with others of like mind is a tremendous asset for San Antonio. And it is a tremendous problem-solving mechanism that is working in many ways. So
I just want to let you know that, Beverly, I'm going to take this recording today.
Okay.
And these last minutes of yours, and I'm going to be showing them to a group. I think there is a possibility of a center like that on the horizon. But I want to take it to a group and share what you just said through this video, which, by the way, these recordings can be utilized by all of us, not just when we miss one, right? But when we're working with others. I also want to utilize this very moment to share another part of the model that happens, right? So one, Beverly, you said something about a group in the East Side working on domestic violence. Karen Ball, did you hear that? So Karen Ball is one of the co-leads for the Domestic Violence Prevention and Congregations Collaborative. You two need to talk and find out what that is together and connect those efforts. So that's a perfect example of what Beverly is talking about, of what we need. Now I'm going to make another connection. So Eric and Rosa Edna and Karen Ball and people in that domestic violence. So Eric, I know that in your work and all the work that we're doing, it's all connected, right? Your work with the Clubhouse, forming communities that focuses on mental health, right? But we know that in terms of like domestic violence, that's all in there. So Eric, do you do any of the certification processes and the training that you have with folks like Rosa Edna, who have life experience in terms of domestic violence, and then of course, the impact that has on their mental health and wellness?
Yeah, I can address that. And Rosa is right. I didn't talk about that when we talked about peer support. The whole idea of being a peer specialist is you have lived experience with the things you're helping people with. And so the term peer can mean so many things in so many different audiences that we have found ourselves over the years kind of describing two kinds of peers, like lowercase p peer, like, I'm a veteran, so I'm a peer to other veterans, but I would never be a peer specialist to other veterans because I'm not a certified peer. So when we talk about a capital P peer, we're normally talking about certified peers with the state of Texas that have gone through the licensing process through the state of Texas, versus every other kind of, different levels of formality for peers that may just have shared experiences, and so when we're talking about peers, we're talking about the certified peers with the state of Texas, which has 3 different paths today for like ways that people can be peers. There will be future additional paths. I'm confident of that. But today you have people whose life has been seriously disrupted at some point by mental health challenges. So mental health peers, people whose life has been significantly impacted at some point by substance use challenges. So our recovery support peers, and then people whose life has been disrupted substantially by having to support their loved ones, usually their children, dealing and working through the mental health care systems, and so that is its own form of trauma. It is recognized by the state, and there is a peer certification called the Certified Family Partner that is focused on if you have helped your loved one navigate these systems, there's lots of people that are trying to do the same thing, please help them, and that those are official Medicaid billable roles that exist at different types of organizations. And so bringing it back to the question about domestic violence, what I have learned over the last 2 years or so of talking to different partner organizations in the community is I have stopped saying, well, we focus only on mental health or substance use stuff, because almost explicitly and almost every time that I talk to somebody, they say, right, but our folks who have gone through these things, they've had major life disruptions by the mental health ramifications from the thing that has happened. And that has been universal almost across a variety of different kinds of environments where we say, well, we don't really work in this field. And people come back and it's like, yeah, but we've got mental health impacts because of this thing. And so we qualify as mental health peer specialists. The mental health peer specialist certification is about 46 hours long in total. It's a 6-hour like introduction and then like a 40-hour training. In that, the crux of it is it's very little about like these are mental health diagnoses or nothing like that. It's really about how do you support people? How do you understand how to help people with problem solving? How do you know how to share your story to help someone? Because your recovery story is a key tool that you have to be able to say, I've been through all of these things. I felt all of these feelings, and you're going to be okay. I'm okay. You're going to be fine. You can be fine. You give people hope. And so it really isn't, there's not a lot of like, there's like no medical or clinical stuff in there. It's really about how are you going to be well and share your experience to help somebody else with their experiences. So I think there's a high likelihood that if somebody has experienced domestic violence, that they may have had other impacts in their life that might qualify them to be certified as a mental health peer. If people don't identify as having that lived experience, they can't get certified. They're not really even supposed to get trained technically, but we have found a lot of folks, again, in environments where it isn't about mental health, it isn't about substance use, but it is about another life circumstance. And then when you talk to them, they say, well, when I learned of this information or when this thing happened, I experienced incredible amounts of trauma, and it's like, okay, well, then you basically attest that you had these life disruptions. There's no test, there's no requirement for you to show up and say, here's my diagnosis or my hospital bill. You say that this is something that has happened to me. If you agree to basically the way that it's laid out by the state, then you qualify for the trainings.
Thank you, Eric. It's 8:42. So I'm going to do one last step here with what we're hearing. This has been really beneficial, I think. It helps me. It helps, I think, all of us, and maybe some of you already knew all this stuff. That's great. So glad you do, and you're working at it. But they're little bits and pieces, and it just strengthens us. So one of the next steps in this example is Rosa Edna connecting Karen Ball with the collaborative as that peer, and then connecting Rosa Edna with Form Communities peer certification and training with Eric. And that's going to be our follow-up to today's collaborative time together. So what I'm finding exciting at the intersection is how we're actually doing more and more work during the intersection, whether we're aware of it or not. And we just experienced, this is how collaborative work works. And in fact, I would go even further. This is how humans actually survive and thrive. This is how humans work together. And I know I've mentioned this before, but there's a lot of historical and current research how we are social beings, and how the reason that we have survived as a species is because of working together. Not the survival of the fittest, but working together. So I know that what we're doing is not a new concept. It's very ancient. But we are remembering and engaging it, and is very innovative. Because we can also look at other systems, right? And organizations and things around us that aren't practicing necessarily full collaboration, and they're struggling. There's like big gaps. And so we're talking about changing entire systems. And I think we all know that there are entire systems that need to be changed, but it takes steps like these, and that's how it's changed, right? Never doubt that a small group of committed individuals can change the world, because indeed it is the only thing that ever has. Thank you, Margaret Mead. So next week, I really encourage you to come, because we're going to be looking again at the vaccine update of what's happening and going to be happening at the turn of the year, equity within vaccines and where those are needed. So we're going to have the city's vaccine equity officer. We have one of those come next week. And so I hope you join us. Thank you all. Have a great day. Beautiful weekends. I hope to see you at the Welcome Walk. I would love to see you at University Presbyterian, the Soul Center, and remembering and celebrating together that hope is truly an action. Thank you. Have great days.
You too.
Thank you.